Welcome to another awesome show of Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you for tuning in once again. Today we're talking about a very sensitive subject, which is substance abuse. And I know in most cases our community or our society is obviously, it frowns upon somebody that's is an addict. They're always quite judgmental around how the person got themselves into the situation. And today I have Thato, who's going to share with me his journey of substance abuse. He's currently recovered. I think he's been clean for about 4 years. So that's an awesome achievement. But yeah, let's let him tell us and give us the details. Thato, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat to me.
It's my pleasure.
It's really an honor to have somebody that is willing to talk about this issue because, like I said, it's a sensitive issue. No one wants to talk about it. People feel embarrassed. And I think as a society, it's time, we need to talk about it. I need you to unpack for me what you as an addict was going through so that we can see it from a different view. Because I am one of those people that was judgmental towards people that are addicts. I frowned upon them and I say, but like, why the hell did you get yourself in there? Yeah. But without understanding what really takes place. And I think I'm now in a position where I want to know, I am interested so that I can obviously shift my view and see how we can start working with people that are addicts that do want to recover. So I think as the first question, talk to me about that journey. What got you into this substance abuse and what influenced it? And talk to me, give me the detail around exactly what substance was it?
Okay. Yeah. Let me start by saying that nobody chooses to be an addict.
Okay.
It's you get into substance abuse. It always starts off socially.
Correct.
Nobody's born and says, I aspire to be an addict or an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But there's something that happens along the way that triggers you to depend on substances as a crutch or as a getaway or a sanctuary. So you'll start off drinking or taking a substance just socially with friends or whatever the case may be. And either before you started with the substances or once you're on the substances, something triggers the desire to want to stay there because drugs are a sanctuary. It's a getaway. Most drug addicts, and I'm not talking about myself specifically, but most drug addicts are actually very smart people, very, very smart people, and they find themselves in situations where they feel like other people don't understand their train of thought or the kind of intensity with which they think. So for them to find themselves in a space where they can almost drop down to other people's level, they need to be on substances or to get away from other people.
Correct, yeah.
So I got into it as a social thing. And funny enough, up until grade 8, if you had handed me a cigarette or a beer, I probably would have run the opposite direction. And I got into those things because of the culture of the environment that I was in. In primary school and my first year in high school, the people I was surrounded with had the same mindset. We were athletes. I was a football player. I was an athlete, and my entire group was that way. So we didn't subscribe to drugs at all. And then I moved to a different school where the culture was more laid back, more cigarettes are okay, but don't go into drugs.
Cigarettes is cool.
Alcohol is not so bad, but don't go into drugs. And it's a step-by-step thing. So it's mainly culture and being social and wanting to fit in. Also, your environment at home plays a big role. My dad smoked, so because my dad smoked, smoking was okay. My dad would drink occasionally, so to start off with, I wasn't a heavy drinker. I'd drink once every 6 months, every now and again. Then I'd go on a bench for about 3 or 4 months, and then I'd get back into football, and I wouldn't drink for a year. So over the years, that's pretty much how it's been. But yeah, I got into drugs as a way to fit in socially and at parties and whatever the case may be.
And what drug was it, if you don't mind me asking?
My first one was weed, or marijuana as they call it. That's the drug I still fear the most. I don't know why people think it's look, I have my own theories about a lot of things, and one of them is that the body's tolerance is not the same between different people. One person can drink a case of beer and feel nothing, the next will have a glass and it's different. Weed for me was that. It was that drug where I was like, I'd much rather smoke nyaope, really cheap house. So the first drug was weed for about a year or two in high school, and then it just didn't work out for me. The first time I got drunk actually was in '95. It was on the 31st of December. I was with my brothers. Well, they're my cousins, but we grew up as very close as brothers. And I spent a lot of time with them, and it was on the 31st. So I went to my...
As in 31st December, right? Yeah.
So I went to my brother's girlfriend's place with him, and there was this lady that was older than me. I think that's where the problem started. And I thought she looked very pretty. I was 11 at the time.
Wow.
So my brother was like, "Are you going to have something to drink?" I was like, "Yeah, have Hunter's Gold." He gave me a 6-pack. I went through the 6-pack in 30 minutes.
A whole 11-year-old.
Entire 6-pack. I was 11 years old. I won't say which brother it is.
Please, let's not implicate brothers here.
But I went through an entire 6-pack, and obviously being my first time, the body's tolerance was probably still high. I didn't feel anything until around 8 o'clock that evening. My brother suggested, "Hey dude, 12 o'clock, cricket. So go and take a nap or wake you up at 12.
Okay.
Bad idea. Bad idea. I went to sleep. When he woke me up, I was wasted. Absolutely smashed. We went home. He woke me home. We got home, got into my bed, and I slept. And I would have gotten away with it until the bed started spinning. And I made a huge mess on the floor, and it spins at a high speed. And it just wouldn't stop. And that was my first interaction with alcohol. I didn't have alcohol again for about another 5 years. So started off with alcohol that way, then cigarettes, and then alcohol and cigarettes, and then marijuana. And that was it for probably until 2005. I used to see people where I used to work. The first company I worked for was Data, fresh out of high school. I used to see people, and because I was so young then, I was 18, 19, you'd hear in the corridors, so-and-so is on this, so-and-so is on that, you know, and I used to think...
And I'm sure that time, like ecstasy and all those...
I heard of it. I'd never seen a drug in my life, apart from marijuana. And I used to hear it, and I thought, no, but they're allowed to do it, because they're much older. I mean, my colleagues were 25, 26, some of them up to 30, and I was only 18. So I was like, I know. That age, it's fine for them. Me, I'll stick with alcohol, and I was still very heavy into football that time. Then my first interaction with drugs was with cocaine. It was in 2006. I was out with some cousins, and we were drinking at a friend's place, and they kept disappearing. Kadi one, you know, and I called one of them over and said, Gents, you keep leaving him by himself. Where you going? You know? And they said, no, well, we can't tell you because you're a soccer player and you're an athlete. And I was like, hey, dude, I want to know. And he pulled out a bag of cocaine. It was the first time I ever saw it in my entire life. I'd seen it on TV a lot of times. And my friend was like, well, this is the reason why we're leaving. And I'm like, dude, I've done that many times. Mind you, this is the first time I've ever seen it. I became good at that too. So he gave me some cocaine, one of my cousins, and funny enough, I took to cocaine like a duck to water. And that's where the journey started. First couple of years was once every 3 months, once every 6 months, and I always had this policy: I'll never buy drugs with my own money. And
so you just smoke other people's drugs?
When they had drugs, I'd smoke their drugs. If they didn't have, then
How expensive is this cocaine?
When I started, it was probably around $250 a bag, and it's a gram. And then I found what most assume to be the cheaper version of cocaine, which is cat. And that's from as cheap as 50 Rand a bag. Okay,
not bad. I mean, with 250 you get 5, right?
So then I realized that there was a whole world that I'd never known about in my township. I'm from Soweto. And I used to think drugs like this you won't find in Soweto. Go Soweto, ke matekwa, le Thai, le nyaope. And then I found out that there's a place called Marikana. I won't say exactly where it is. Those that know will know where it is. But literally every second house is a drug den. Literally every second house. The kind of environment where you walk up to a house, knock on the door, say, hey, I need
So
to...
this Marikana place in Soweto, every second house there is selling this thing?
Just about.
Wow.
And you walk up to a house, knock on the door, hey, I need to chill, I've got, no, there's a corner.
And
yeah, you know, and
okay.
that's just the way it is. And that's when I was introduced into the deep side of it. So, yeah, that's pretty much how I got into drugs.
Yeah, wow. And did your family know? Obviously in the beginning they wouldn't have known.
Mm.
But did they know at some point?
Yes and
how
no.
did they find out?
There were suspicions just before I went into rehab. But for the first 10, 12 years, no. Nobody had any clue. Then there were suspicions about 3 years before I went into rehab, because that's when I had hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
This is when now I was literally living the drug life. Asleep the whole day, hustling the whole night to get drugs. And even then it was suspicion. Nobody had absolute certainty.
Yeah, no one was sure that that's what you're doing.
So my family didn't know. I remember when my mother was called and I was in rehab. They told her I was in rehab and they needed to see her at the rehab. And she said rehab for her because Thato doesn't drink. The last 2.5 years, I quit alcohol because I figured it was too expensive, because when you take drugs, certain drugs, doesn't matter how much you drink, you just don't get drunk. And I had to choose.
And you chose that.
I had to prioritize. So
and
yeah.
You prioritized.
And I chose to go with my drug of choice, which was cat and crystal meth from time to time.
Yeah.
And I quit alcohol. And my mother knew that I wasn't drinking. So she was like, rehab for what? Thato doesn't drink. They were like drugs. And she kind of laughed it off. Like, no, Thato won't be on drugs. I was still heavily playing football at the time. And so football has always been my sanctuary. But as I got older and I couldn't play as much, that's how drug became the crutch. Because growing up in a family where there was a lot of conflict and turmoil, both within the immediate family and extended. The only happiness I felt, true happiness, that could be compared to the happiness of a drug was the 90 minutes I spent on the soccer field. Yeah. So as I was getting older and I couldn't spend 90 whole minutes on the field, this was my next crutch. And I was replacing football with drugs. So yeah, my mother didn't believe it.
So, I mean, how did you afford this habit, right? It must have been very expensive. And you mentioned that you at some point you lived a drug life where you are sleeping the whole day, then you were hustling. Like how did you afford this? Because
so there's again, I was introduced to another world.
Okay.
The world of crime. Would I say I was a hardened criminal? Not necessarily. I wouldn't do armed robberies. And I was more tag along. Because I always say to people, I get left, I get
yeah.
So I was always associated with people that could hustle. And mine was just to be a part of it.
To be part of that, so that when the money is done, you get your cut and you support the habits.
Yeah, so funny enough, driving here, we were having that conversation with my friend that's here. There's a friend of mine that was really good at working fake notes. And we were discussing it on the way. He is a master, and we were laughing about it. But fake notes were primarily how I was able to afford it. Every now and again, I'd be asked by somebody. I've always been passionate about driving. And I've always had friends come to ask me to join them when they go out so that I could drive the getaway car.
Correct, yes.
I never had the guts. But every now and again, I would be involved in having to move a car from one place to another, or having to...
And then obviously you'd get paid for that.
Yeah,
right?
I'd get my little cut from that. But the major jobs were done by the people that were what I considered to be the experts in their fields. So that's how I afforded it. Knowing the right people, sometimes playing middleman. Somebody's got a car they want to sell. I know somebody who wants to buy it. I'm in the middle.
You get your
add
cut,
my 1,000 rand markup, sell the vehicle or whatever, sell whatever it is. So I afforded it by knowing people that knew how to survive and being able to get my cut from what they were making.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. And I think, what are the craziest things you've ever done? Like, what's the craziest thing? And when you look at today, you're like, did I really do that? Like, which obviously shows the level of the depth that you were into these drugs now. you know, when you look at it today? What's that thing?
I'm a father of 4, with 4 different women.
Yeah.
I've been involved in some crap. I'd say my entire life has been it's been one hell of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware. I'm also in the process of writing a book. I've got a page on
Facebook.
Facebook.
You did miss. Yeah.
And those are all things that came from sitting around telling people about this part of my life, or that part, or this part, or that part. So to pinpoint one would be very difficult. I
know. I always hear that, you know, people that are abusing substance, they're always, you know, asking for money. And there's always a story in Jena, you know. Do you ever do that to try and get a fix?
Yes. Yes.
Spin a big story.
I did a lot of that.
Okay.
That's where I primarily made my own income.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been one that was known to borrow money much.
Okay.
So when I went on Facebook, I'd go on Facebook and I'd ask my friends from high school, listen, I've got a situation. And because my friends trusted me, if I asked for 200 rand,
they'd give it.
He'd be like, hey dude, you've never asked me for money.
Yeah.
You asked me for 200, you've got a situation, so here's 5.
Yeah.
You know? And I did that to a lot of my high school friends and people that I'd worked with, even at DD.
Yeah.
Because that was primarily where I had family.
Correct.
Outside of my own family. And that's primarily why when I came out of rehab, the first article I wrote was a confession to everybody that I'd taken money from.
This is what it's for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I got most of my money, my ability to talk my way in and out of things. And it's something that it's one of the things that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate.
And I mean, you can't be proud of anything you did while you were under the influence in any case.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's why I came out, and I had to sit down for a long time and think about how people would receive it. When I told them that this is my situation, this is where I've been, this is what I've done. And fortunately enough, I went to most of my friends. I couldn't remember all of them. But I went to most of my friends that I'd asked for money and I said, listen, I'm clean now. I'm going to try and find a job. Whatever I owe you, I'm going to pay it back.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to the people that I associated myself with, because most of their responses, I think 98% of
were
them
positive.
Were, you only have to pay me if you go back on drugs. And that
was a very hard condition, though.
Yeah. At the time. Now I'm grateful that I've been able to stay down that road. I don't see myself ever going back. There's just too many bad memories, too many bad decisions. But
tell me about something that you regret losing as a result of your substance abuse. What's the one thing today that you feel you have lost and you regret that?
A possible football career. I started playing at Orlando Pirates. I was never officially signed to them, but I trained with them for about 6 months. And I stopped going one day because I'd been drinking. I remember I went to one training session and I got into trouble with the coach of that day, which was Thato Matshoane, because I'd rocked up at training drunk. And he told me never to come back. And I didn't go back because of my pride and the fact that I'd chosen alcohol over a career. So the biggest thing that I've ever lost is my football career. I carried on playing, in junior ranks. I went all the way up to 3rd division football at Vodacom. But I think football is one thing that I look at and I still have tears in my eyes because that's still my number one love. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, that's obviously something you can never get back. Talk to me about the journey of recovery. I mean, you've been clean for how long?
4 years and a month now and a couple of days.
Yeah. That's a long time. And you're still going strong.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that journey. How difficult, how has it been? Because it can't be easy.
It isn't. It isn't. And I think the reason why most recovering addicts fail is that they sold a dream. It's not easy. It's no fun at all. It's
so what is this dream that they're sold? What are they sold?
That in sobriety there's happiness. There isn't. Well, there's to a certain extent. I mean, you're not miserable.
Yeah.
But I often say if I could go back to drugs and not mess up my life, I would. I was much happier then. The journey of recovery is not an easy one. And the journey of being in recovery and following the NA program is even more difficult for a black child.
Can you imagine?
Because it's designed for middle to upper class people. I mean, first of all, with the program, you have what they call a 90-90. That's 90 meetings in the first 90 days of being in recovery.
Right.
I went to rehab in Randburg. I was fortunate enough to go to rehab in Randburg. And living in Soweto, having to travel to Randburg every day was difficult. So I didn't complete my 90-90. I almost had to redesign my own recovery program.
So the circumstances of your life also contribute to the journey of recovery.
Definitely. So I had to almost redesign, which I don't recommend to anybody, but I had to redesign my own recovery program within my circumstances. And 80% of that is based on will, the desire to stay clean. 80% of being clean is just from pure desire. To be clean. The other 20% is avoiding your triggers. Like for the first 3 to 4 months of coming out of rehab, I didn't want to touch money. I spent time with my aunt in Ennerdale. And I chose that specifically because I knew that she understood. You know, she's the only aunt that's ever been on my side, by my side. So I chose to go there. And when she would send me anywhere, I'd always say, give me your card. I don't want cash. You know, when I used to take my drugs, I used to heat a pipe with a cigarette lighter. So when I came out of rehab, I was still smoking cigarettes then. I've been off cigarettes now since the beginning of lockdown. So I don't smoke cigarettes either. But when I came out of rehab, I always asked for a box of matches as opposed to a cigarette lighter because the sound of
it reminds you of that. It triggers
that gave me cringes. So the journey of recovery makes it very difficult because the whole program is designed around having the financial backing.
Correct.
Also, the system fails recovering addicts in the sense that, to my understanding and my knowledge, my 21 days in recovery cost me 128,000 rand. That included the medication, the stay at the rehab facility and everything.
Who supported you? Who paid for that?
The mother of my son. I was on her medical aid at the time.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to be on her medical aid at the time. And coming out of rehab, being in rehab, it's easy to stay clean. You're there, you've got the walls, you've got the nurses, you've got other recovering addicts. It's very simple. When you come out, this is where society fails people. Because if I didn't have my aunt to go to, I would have to come out of rehab and go straight back into the environment that got me on drugs. You're never going to win. You're never going to win. So you take a Nyaope addict, you take them to rehab. When they come back, they have to go and chill in the same street corner with their friends that are still on the substance. So it's always going to fail the addicts. So for me, my journey of recovery, like I said, I had to redesign it. I had to understand where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are, and what I wanted out of it, which is to be a father. I mean, it's safe to say with 4 kids, I'm a terrible partner. But I'd like to be, if there's one thing I can ask for from my higher power to replace not having played football, is to be a good father.
I was actually going to ask, I mean, you said the mother of your son paid for the medical aid bills because you were in her medical. Where is she today? I mean, someone that supported you through that process.
She's around, but for her to get me to go to rehab, we had a fight and it was a physical altercation. And she was going to walk out anyway. And my request was, before you walk out, book me into a rehab because I'm going to die. So fortunately, I don't know if they'd agree with me, but I'd like to think I have a great relationship with the mothers of my kids, all of them. I could pick up the phone and call anyone socially right now. The biggest gripe we have is when I have my financial hiccups.
Yes,
and
where you can't obviously.
Yeah, and it's justified. You know, I'll get a shout in the air to go, yeah, umdano 1, 2, 3, and you haven't. So we have those conversations.
Yeah, and it's okay though. You take it. It's your responsibility. Stuff must do.
But on any other day, I could pick up the phone and have a conversation. And it's the one thing I've always asked them for, to say, we're not here because you made a bad decision. We're here because I did.
Yeah.
So if you ever need to fight with anyone or hate anyone, this is the person.
Correct.
But I'm never going to fight back because of the fact that even when I, even when I was in addiction, they kept my memory alive to my kids.
Yeah.
So I've never heard my kid being told, your father's useless or your father's a drug addict.
Yeah.
It was always, your dad is this, your dad is that. And it was always positive. Okay. So even when I decided to come back and be a father, my kids knew that this is daddy, you know, and for that I'll forever be grateful. And it's not good for my relationships after that, because I've always said that any woman that comes into my life and says the mothers of your kids are a problem, she'll have to go, because I owe those women my life, and that's just the fact. I'm always going to have the utmost respect for them. I always protect them with everything in me, because to this day, all my bad decisions, and they still make sure my kids call me daddy, and that for me is no amount of money can pay for that. It's beyond words. So, getting back to your question, because I can babble on forever when it comes to recovery.
No, I mean it's really just quite insightful what you're saying.
This journey of being in recovery, so I started a page called Discovering Recovery. It's been inactive for a while, but it's a project I'm going to finish. I'm still in the process of writing a book, and with that, I've hooked up with other recovering addicts. Some of them are still in prison, so we speak on Facebook. Don't ask me how they do it. I know nothing of it. I just know they're still in prison.
And how are they in prison?
Yeah, I know. They've got more time than me. Yeah, but there's a guy that I met, and again, I'm not going to mention his name because he's still in prison and he shouldn't have a phone. But we've become very close. We've become very close. I understand his release is not far, but he's come up with some amazing ideas about what he'd like us to do. You know, and I think one of the benefits that I have, and I remember a therapist in my rehab mentioned this. We're chilling in rehab, and I was chilling with my friends. There was a group of white kids. And we had 3 boys, it was 2 boys, one from Zola, one from Jabulani. And obviously they were a bit out of their depth. This was a white rehab. So they were chilling with just the 2 of them. So it was just the 2 of them chilling there, and I was chilling with some of the white kids and we were having a conversation. And I decided, then let me go have a chat with the guys, and I walked across.
Because you could obviously relate to both sides.
And that's what one of the therapists made me aware of. He then called me over and said, do you realize that you have a gift? And I said, what do you mean? He said, you just walk straight out of Sandton into the heart of Soweto and you fit right in like that.
Correct.
And that's one of the things that I use. My language of choice is English, so it makes it difficult to have in-depth conversations with Machita Bokas when it comes to having the technical terms and getting them to understand. But even though most of the guys that are still inactive, will come to me and go, I know you were here, I need you to tell me how you stopped, and I try to advocate for them because society doesn't understand what it is to be an addict.
So what would you like the society to understand today? Like what is the one thing that you would want society to start being open about and start thinking about when it comes to substance abuse?
The first and most important thing is that we're not victims. I made a choice to take a drug. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody forced it down or up my nose. So we're not victims. But what we do ask for is for you to understand that once I'm there, what kind of help I need to get out. So I've tried to fight away this thing that addicts are victims. We're not the victims. We're the perpetrators. One of the articles I have on my Facebook page is Apology of an Addict, Shame of a Thug. And that explains my outlook on an addict. Apology of an addict. As an addict, I'm a sick person that needs help. But shame of a thug. As a thug, I'm shameful because of my action of being an addiction. And that's 2 different people that you speak to. So when you speak to the addict that just committed the crime, he's a criminal and he needs to face the circumstances of his actions full on.
Yeah.
But if they haven't committed a crime, they're just an addict, then you need to look at them as a sick person. There's always those two to contend.
Yeah. And I think you separate it quite nicely, because I've always seen that addicts are linked with criminality, you know, and I like what you've just said. I've never, you know, that there are two. Yes, you'll find an addict that does criminal practices, and then you find another addict that doesn't. So you need to treat these things differently.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about, do you think that you'll ever be happy in the same way that you were happy when you were high?
No. Never.
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the yearn or the want to be as happy?
Well, to put into perspective first, before I answer that question, I'll never be as happy on drugs or sober as I was on drugs.
You wasn't, okay.
Because it would be the same as if you're in a relationship and you have a partner and you have an amazing sex life, and your partner decides on one day to take Viagra, and you take your sex life to the next level. If he stops taking Viagra, it doesn't make him bad sexually, but you will never reach those highs that were influenced by the substance that you took. So
okay, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah.
So being sober, I will never be as happy, because that happiness was influenced or was based on the fact that I was on a substance. So it was motivated by a substance. I will never reach those highs. And that's why earlier on I said people are sold a dream that you'll be happier off drugs than you. It's never going to happen. That's not true. The truth that you have to accept about being in recovery is you need to make a decision about whether you want a normal life, depending on what your definition of normal is, or if you want to stay on that life where it only ends with one of three things: jails, institutions, or death. That's the only outcome of any substance.
Yeah.
So I've had to decide and say to myself, I want to be a father. Can I be a father and an addict? No, I can't be. And that's why I stay sober, so I can be a father. If I didn't have kids, would I be sober? Probably not. I'd have nothing to live for. I don't think I'd choose to be sober. I was much happier on drugs. But I have to stay sober so I can be a father. And that's the choice I had to make. That's my reason for staying sober.
Wow.
Yeah. Just one other thing, Penny. There's one major difference. I will always live with a hole in my soul. The only difference between me and the active addict is time. No, I will forever be an addict. I will never get to the point of being recovered. I will forever be a recovering addict. The only difference is time. My last drug was 4 years ago. His last drug is 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
but we're both addicts, and that's the way it's always going to be.
Sure. Okay, so I mean, my last question, Thato, to you would be: you spoke a lot about how you were funding your habits and hustling and not working, and you lost a lot from this abuse. But if you had all the money, you know, if you had, you know, if you win the lottery and you had 200 million, which doesn't affect your lifestyle, you still support your kids because you're quite big on being a good father. Would you continue doing cocaine?
Yes. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of addicts out there that are what we call functional addicts. The reason why I went into rehab was my life became unmanageable, right?
So it was dysfunctional.
It was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of functional addicts that wake up every morning, buy their bag, and go through their day.
And come back and...
So, I might have to go back on that answer again, because every time now I think about taking a drug, the answer is yes. Every time I think about drinking a beer, the answer is yes. But I've got this theory to play the movie to the end. And at the end of my movie, the answer is no. And what do I mean by play the movie to the end? If you handed me a drug now, and I took it, what would then happen? I'd hit a euphoric high. The rest of today, tomorrow, and maybe the next 7 days would be amazing. And then there would be the portion of the downer. And every time I think about going back to drugs, I think about the last emotion that I felt when I walked into the gates of the rehab that I went to. I had my last bag, which I took in the parking lot, and that emotion is an emotion I never want to go back to. So Off the top of my head, if you gave me a drug and I had 200 million, would I take it? Probably yes. But once it was in front of me, I'd probably think twice about where it would be taking me. And it's the emotional side that would probably get me to go, thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
Because drugs do have a major play on the emotion. There's a whole lot of hormones and the whole medical side of things. Look, I was in rehab for 21 days and I just touched the tip of the iceberg about what addiction is.
Yeah.
But simply put, if you've ever had a lot to drink and you wake up on a Monday morning, you never want to have alcohol again, you're feeling depressed and all sorts of things. That's because an alcoholic babalas or hangover is similar to the drug downer. It plays on the emotions. So it affects the body's ability to manage the hormones that manage the emotions. So yes, if I had 200 million, my answer would be yes, please bring me the drug. But once it was in front of me, I'd probably have to reconsider. Because I know where I'd be headed to. I've been there.
Thank you so much. You've said a mouthful, and I'm really, really grateful. And I think you've taught me one or two things, I think, today. Really just to be open-minded about what goes on in an addict's head, what goes on when one is an addict. And I think, you know, I'm so proud that you are clean for 4 years and a month and a couple of days. And I think, you know, big ups to you and continue. But yeah, guys, I think this was a really I don't know what to call it, but it's real, and I think I must say I've gotten what I wanted to get from this discussion, because I've gotten to understand a bit of what goes on the other side when one does actually take substance and that is abusing substance. But thank you so much for tuning into the Hot Seat with Benzola. Please remember to subscribe, like and comment, and share your experience. You know, if you are affected by substance abuse one way or another. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real thing.